Around 14,500 BCE, Japan entered what's called the Jomon period. The name comes from the intricate rope pattern pottery they made, and lucky for us, we can still see these pieces in museums, like the Tokyo National Museum. At first, the Jomon people were nomadic, but by 13,000 BCE, they started putting down roots, literally. They settled into small villages, made pottery, and began living a more sedentary lifestyle. Then, later around 900 BCE, farmers from East Asia brought in wet rice farming and metalworking, leading to fortified villages, competition over land, and the rise of organized leadership. And if you think that's interesting, wait until you hear about the rest of their history: stunning geography, unique geopolitics, powerful economy, and vibrant culture. This is an island nation, unlike anywhere else in the world. Now here's where it gets interesting. In 660 BCE, Japan crowned its first emperor Jimmu, said to be a descendant of the sun goddess Amaterasu. He began unifying the country from Kyushu to the Yamato Plain, modern-day Nara. And fun fact, Japan's current imperial family still traces its roots back to Jimmu, making it the oldest continuing hereditary monarchy in the world. So, with political power centered in Nara, Japan began connecting with nearby powerhouses like China and Korea. These early exchanges had a huge impact, from government systems and architecture to writing and religion. One of the biggest cultural shifts came in the 6th century when Buddhism was introduced, primarily from India, China, and Korea. The ruling elite quickly embraced it, along with Confucian principles from China, which shaped Japan's early governance and social structure. With peace and order came a cultural boom. Japan started blending foreign influences with native traditions and began calling itself Nippon, or the land of the rising sun. By the 8th century, Japanese literature took off. The imperial court commissioned Japan's first historical texts, the Kojiki in 712 and Nihon Shoki in 720, which mixed mythology, politics, and Shinto beliefs. Then came the Manyoshu in 759. It's the oldest surviving collection of Japanese poetry. Next up is Japan's golden age of culture, the Heian period, which ran from 794 to 1185. This was when Japan's writing systems, known as hiragana and katakana, were developed. It's also when Murasaki Shikibu, a court lady, wrote The Tale of Genji in 1010, widely considered the world's first novel. But that piece didn't last. Starting in 1185, Japan entered its medieval period, nearly 400 years of civil war and power struggles. But out of the chaos emerged a new ruling class, the samurai. It began with the Minamoto clan defeating rivals, and Minamoto no Yoritomo becoming Japan's first shogun. And from then on, emperors held symbolic power, while military leaders ran the country. Over time, local warlords, or daimyo, grew stronger and more independent. By the 1400s, Japan plunged into non-stop conflict known as the Sengoku, or Warring States period. That changed with the rise of three powerful leaders: Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, known as the Three Unifiers. They began stitching the fractured country back together. And just as things were settling, Europeans arrived. In 1543, Portuguese traders accidentally landed on a southern island, bringing matchlock guns, cannons, and Christianity. At first, Christianity gained followers, but by the early 1600s, the shogunate banned it. Persecution followed, and many believers went underground. But guess what? Some of their hidden churches still exist near Nagasaki today. After unifying Japan, Tokugawa Ieyasu established a new shogunate in Edo, which soon became Tokyo. He locked down power by enforcing strict social rules and limiting foreign contact. So, Japan shut its borders to nearly all outsiders, entering an isolation period that lasted over 250 years. The Sankin Kotai system was a policy of the Tokugawa shogunate that required daimyo to spend alternating years either in their home domains or at the shogun's court in Edo. To tighten control, the shogunate also kept their families in Edo as virtual hostages. And since they had to maintain two lavish residences, this system drained the lords financially and kept them too busy and broke to rebel. But while they were stretched thin, Edo boomed, eventually becoming one of the world's largest cities. And with peace came prosperity. However, their isolation didn't last long, because in 1853, U.S. Admiral Matthew Perry sailed into Tokyo Bay with steam-powered ships and a clear message: open up or else. Under pressure, Japan signed unequal treaties, and the shock sparked a national push for reform. In 1868, the shogunate collapsed. Rebels like Sakamoto Ryoma restored power to the emperor, and with the defeat of Saigo Takamori, the last samurai, the old era ended. This ushered in the Meiji Restoration. The emperor returned symbolically, and Japan dove into modernization. They studied the West, hired foreign experts, built railroads, factories, and schools. Tokyo became the new imperial capital, and society quickly embraced Western clothing, ideas, and institutions. And in just one generation, Japan transformed from a feudal state into a rising industrial power. But modernization came with militarism. Japan went to war with China, then Russia, and won. These victories shocked the world and established Japan as a major force in East Asia. But that ambition led to darker times. In the decades leading up to World War II, Japan expanded its military presence across the region, and in 1945, after the devastating atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the country surrendered, marking the end of the war and the beginning of a new era. So after centuries of dramatic change, Japan has grown into a resilient, forward-thinking nation. But to truly get a sense of what makes Japan so unique, you need to look at the land itself. Japan sits near Korea, Russia, and China, with the Sea of Japan forming a natural border from the mainland. It's an island nation made up of thousands of islands, though four main ones, namely Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu, and Shikoku, make up most of the country. Across these islands, Japan is divided into 8 regions and 47 prefectures, each with its own character. Over half the country is covered in mountains and forests, which makes for breathtaking views, but also limits the amount of flat land available. Most people live in coastal areas where it's easier to build, farm, and trade. The largest of these is the Kanto Plain, which is home to Tokyo, Yokohama, and Kawasaki. Nearly a third of Japan's population lives here. It's also a major hub for business, manufacturing, and global trade, thanks in part to the deep water port in Yokohama. Besides this, other key lowland areas include the Kansai region, which is home to Osaka, Kyoto, and Kobe, and the Nobi Plain around Nagoya. Even in these dense urban zones, you'll spot small farms tucked between buildings, growing rice, vegetables, and fruit. Japanese farmers are experts at using every bit of available land. Head north to Hokkaido, and you'll find more open space. It's known for dairy farms and livestock, with meat becoming increasingly popular, especially among younger generations. And since no one in Japan lives more than 70 miles, or about 113 kilometers from the sea, the ocean has always been central to Japanese life. It's one of the world's top fishing nations, and seafood is a major part of daily meals. Coastal areas also farm seaweed and shellfish using advanced aquaculture techniques. And while that sounds like a dream, there's a downside to it, because the country also sits at the intersection of several tectonic plates, which means frequent earthquakes and volcanic activity. That's also why hot springs are everywhere, and why Mount Fuji, the tallest and most iconic volcano, looms large in the national identity. In terms of the weather, the climate varies a lot because Japan stretches so far from north to south. Most major cities, including Tokyo, experience 4 seasons: mild winters, hot and humid summers, a rainy season in early summer, and typhoons in late summer. Hokkaido and the Sea of Japan coast get heavy snow in winter, while Okinawa in the far south stays warm year-round, averaging 63 degrees Fahrenheit or 17 degrees Celsius even in January. When it comes to politics, Japan has a pretty unique setup. On one side, there's the emperor, seen as a symbol of the nation and a key part of Japanese tradition, but he doesn't actually have any political power. That job goes to the prime minister, who leads the government and runs the cabinet. This system is called a constitutional monarchy, where the monarchy exists, but the real power lies with elected officials. Now here's a fun fact. Japan's lawmaking body is called the National Diet. Sounds like a food plan, but it's actually their version of a parliament. It has 2 parts, the House of Representatives and the House of Councillors. Together, they pass laws and keep the government in check. And when it comes to justice, Japan uses a system similar to many European countries, with 4 levels of courts and a 15-member Supreme Court at the top. Now that you have a gist of what their political system looks like, let's talk about the people. Japan is one of the most homogeneous countries in the world. About 98.5% of people belong to the Yamato ethnic group. The rest include smaller communities like Koreans, Chinese, the Ainu in the north, and the Ryukyuan people from Okinawa and nearby islands. Overall, the country is home to around 125 million people, making it one of the most populated countries in the world. But there's the thing. The population is shrinking, birth rates are low, and people are living longer than ever. That means Japan is aging fast, which puts pressure on everything from healthcare to the workforce. Right now, the average income is about $38,440. However, not everyone is doing well. Roughly 16% of the population lives below the poverty line. And when it comes to the economy, Japan is a heavy hitter. It's the 3rd largest economy in the world, right behind the US and China. In 2024, Japan's GDP was around $6 trillion. For 2025, it's projected to hit $6,380 billion, about 10% higher than the World Bank's official estimate. So what drives all that economic power? You guessed it, cutting-edge tech, sleek cars, world-class electronics, and high-end transportation equipment. Japan is known for staying ahead of the curve. But here's the twist. Japan doesn't have many natural resources of its own. So, where does it all come from? Imports. Lots of them. Japan relies heavily on trade to bring in essentials like food, fuel, wood, and metal. That's why strong relationships with countries like the US, Australia, and Southeast Asia are key to keeping the economy running. So yes, Japan has its share of challenges, an aging population, limited natural resources, but it still leads the world in innovation, global trade, and technology. And if you think Japan's economy is impressive, just wait till you hear about their culture and traditions. First off, Modesty and humility are huge in Japanese society. Instead of handshakes or hugs, people bow to show respect. And the longer and deeper the bow, the more respect it shows. It's like silently saying, "I'm not above you. I honor you." Religion here is also pretty unique. Most people practice both Shintoism and Buddhism at the same time. Babies are welcomed at Shinto shrines, while funerals usually take place at Buddhist temples. And really, it's not about choosing sides. It's about tradition and balance. Now let's talk food. Here, rice is king. It's been the staple for centuries. In fact, samurais used to be paid in rice, and taxes were collected in it too. To this day, people still believe rice is healthier than wheat, and is often the chosen over modern alternatives like quinoa or barley. And guess what? Thanks to Buddhist influence, meat and dairy were rarely eaten until the 1800s. That's actually why many Japanese people are still lactose intolerant today. Isn't that wild? Oh, and get this, sushi, now known around the world as a luxury dish, used to be cheap street food for workers in the 1800s. But enough about the food. Let's put the spotlight on clothing. In Japan, the kimono takes center stage. It's a traditional one-piece garment that dates back to the Heian period. It's usually made of silk, with each design symbolizing something meaningful, like cranes for long life or pine trees for the new year. So as you can imagine, to them, it wasn't just clothing. It was wearable art with deep roots. And speaking of art, we have to talk about one of Japan's living legends, Hayao Miyazaki. He's the genius behind Studio Ghibli's most imaginative animated films ever made. 6 of his movies are among the top 20 highest-grossing Japanese films of all time. And one of them was Spirited Away, which ranks second on the list, and even won an Oscar for Best Animated Feature back in 2002. So, the Japan you may know now is filled with anime, high-speed trains, delicious food, and incredibly high-tech. But it's more than that. Japan is a country where ancient traditions meet modern life in the most fascinating ways. So, if you enjoyed this video, you'll love the next one.